Hi again. So in the last video, I finished by talking to you about topsoil erosion and the different causes of topsoil erosion. So both natural causes like wind and naturally occurring water, and then human caused sources of topsoil erosion. So things like agriculture and excessive irrigation or overgrazing, right, can lead to erosion that would not be considered natural. So exacerbated levels of topsoil erosion. So desertification is something that is also exacerbated by human activities and is a major potential threat to food security around the world. So we've talked about desertification before. Just a reminder, it's a process by which the productive potential of topsoil falls by 10% or more. And this is due to a combination of drought conditions that are prolonged and also by human activities that would further expose that topsoil to erosion. So in very extreme cases, desertification can actually cause existing deserts to expand or can actually create new deserts. And human agriculture is one of the culprits of this. So human agricultural activities have accelerated desertification around the world. And so this would be through excessive plowing of fields, overgrazing of livestock, and also through deforestation, generally related to agricultural activities. And we've talked about the Dust Bowl before, but again, in the 1930s in the Midwest, there were very poor agricultural practices that were actually incentivized by the government. And there were drought conditions and there was a lot of wind activity that led to severe erosion, and the wind basically led to what we would call a dust bowl. So farmers here were forced to abandon their fields and abandon their land. So currently, I said desertification is a problem around the world, but really desertification right now is truly a problem in Africa, south of the Sahara Desert. So the Sahara is actually expanding, and also in northern China and up into southern Mongolia. Excuse me. So topsoil can be degraded by planting crops repeatedly without actually giving any extra nutrients or replenishing nutrients. And it also can be degraded by allowing livestock to overgraze or to trample land. With changing climates, it is expected that drought conditions can be prolonged in different areas of the world. And unfortunately, these are in areas that are already susceptible to drought. And so this can lead to further desertification and also further threaten world food security. Okay, so let's talk about soil salinization, that means. So 70% of the water used by humans is used for irrigation purposes. And most of the water that is used for irrigation purposes actually contains salts, dissolved salts like sodium chloride, and these are accumulated as water flows through rocks and soils in the ground. And so when we use that water, the salts are contained in it. And so when crops are irrigated, the water that is not absorbed by the soils and used by the plants is actually left to evaporate. And as it evaporates, it will leave behind a thin crust of salts. And so over time, as this process is repeated, so as farmers continue to irrigate their fields, Generally, this would be in dry climates. The salt can accumulate in the upper layers of the soil. And so the soil becomes unfertile, basically. And so this is referred to as soil salinization. So it can lead to stunted crop growth, lower crop yields, and eventually it can kill the plants and basically destroy the land so that it's no longer usable. Another problem that can arise from crop irrigation is what we call water logging. So this is where water would actually accumulate underground as crops are irrigated, and over time it would actually raise the water table in the fields, in the surrounding areas. And so this can usually happen, or does usually happen, when farmers try to use large amounts of water to try to reduce soil salinization. The negative effects of water logging are lower crop productivity, and it can eventually kill plants because they won't get enough oxygen. So also it's important to know that excessive irrigation of crops by humans is contributing to depletion of both groundwater and surface water sources, or I should probably say supplies. Okay, so this is just an image of soil salinization. So you can see the white color and also the cracking of the land because it is dried out so much with excessive soil salinization. So as topsoil erodes, it can flow into streams and lakes and also into wetlands. When it does this, it can kill fish and other aquatic organisms like shellfish. It can clog irrigation ditches, boat channels, and also clog up reservoirs and lakes. And so when you have a lot of topsoil flowing into streams, oftentimes it contains large amounts of pesticides that have been used in agricultural production. And so these pesticides can be ingested by aquatic organisms. And the problem with this, I mean, obviously it's just a problem, but if you look at the picture here, you can see this representation of biomagnification. So as pesticides are ingested by smaller organisms, they can actually move up the food chain to larger ones. And as pesticides move up the food chain, they become biomagnified. So you can see at each level here, it's multiplied. The concentration of here, we're looking at DDT, is multiplied by a factor of 10. So as the pesticides move up the food chain to larger and larger organisms, they actually become more concentrated in their tissues. And so, of course, this can mean that eventually humans would be consuming the pesticides as well as we eat these organisms. But it can cause all sorts of problems with food webs and is just generally not a very nice thing. So this is one way that industrialized agriculture contributes to pollution. Another way is that farmers tend to over-fertilize their fields. And so since basically the 1940s, the use of fertilizers has increased about 45-fold. And it really doesn't matter if fertilizers are natural or synthetic, they can both lead to eutrophication. So the nitrates that are contained in the fertilizers can they don't just stay on the plants, they get into the soils and they're applied to the soils, but they percolate down through the soils and can not only cause eutrophication of the groundwater and existing streams or nearby streams, but they can also actually get into drinking water supplies. So not very nice. So not only do agricultural activities lend to groundwater and surface water pollution and soil pollution, but agricultural activities can also lend to air pollution. So more than 25% of human-generated carbon dioxide emissions are from agriculture, and also most emissions from farms are methane and nitrous oxide, which you can see here. So there are various ways that industrialized agriculture has led to exacerbated, emissions to the atmosphere. Okay, so we're gonna leave off there. Next video, we will talk about pesticides more in depth and how they're used to control or manage pests on farms. See y'all later. Bye.